I'm a little jealous and I have a little FOMO that you were able to go to the AI4 conference in Vegas, but I look forward to digging in and hearing all about it as we jump into the episode here.
Yeah, let's jump in.
So go for it. I have to hear. I know there were some really exciting keynote speakers. I know you attended a bunch of sessions. Where do you want to go from here? Should we start with
Yeah,
some of the keynotes?
sure. Yeah. So let me just set the stage a little bit. So yeah, the AI4 conference, apparently it's been running since like 2018, well before anything like ChatGPT came out. It's an industry conference. And yeah, I mean, I went for my work basically because, I'm doing consulting and, it's very relevant to what I do. But I thought there were some really interesting discussions and topics that were very relevant to what we talk about on the podcast. So I definitely wanted to bring some of that back and talk about it with you here. I was very giddy to bring it back back to you. So yeah, let's jump in. I think the keynotes. There were two keynotes, major keynotes. One by Dr. Jeffrey Hinton, who's considered the godfather of AI. I think he worked with like Alan Turing back in the day. And then the second one was by Dr. Fei-Fei Li, who's now, I guess, considered the godmother of AI. So yeah, it was a really interesting dichotomy between their two viewpoints about AI. So I'll start with Dr. Lee. So Dr. Lee's viewpoint is that AI is strictly a tool that we need to control and use, have strict guideline or guardrails around it so that it never becomes an issue in terms of the power it has, which I think is very reasonable, right? And then Dr. Hinton uh, has a very, very different view. So he thinks that AI will at some point inevitably become more powerful than us. So his viewpoint is that we should almost create AI to act as a mother to humanity, which just sounds bonkers at first thought, right? But it's interesting because you could see where he's coming from. Like if he sees a future where AI just becomes so powerful that, maybe its only drive is to survive, then some really bad things could happen, right? Whereas if we program it early on to be a mother to humanity, it just sounds insane saying it, but that's his view. That we could control, not really control it, because then it would still control us, but it'll do it in a nurturing way. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? That just
I
sounds
mean,
bonkers, right?
yes, Fei-Fei Li sounds a lot simpler, a lot easier to relate to, sounds reasonable, and sounds in alignment with some of the conversations you and I have had about like having groups that ensure the safe and responsible development of AI while balancing the need for America to, win at the AI development race. And I think Hinton, I feel like, is going maybe like a generation later of as and when AI becomes more powerful than us, almost saying it's inevitable. Like, great. Like, he's kind of humoring Fei-Fei Li's perspective of like, okay, guardrails, that's cute, but really, let's get serious here. That at some point, AI is going to get more powerful than us. And so, if you say that it's inevitable, then it's not about developing guardrails, but rather controlling the development of AI in a manner that puts it in a human centered mindset where it doesn't ever consider the elimination of humans, that its development as it gets more sophisticated than us is to almost like the Terminator to like
Yeah.
protect the humans, right? Like protect its creator in a way. And I think both are really, I think they're both right in a way. I think one is just like more timely and the other one is a bit more harder to be tangible because it's a little bit further out.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think it's so futuristic, right? Almost sci-fi the way he talks about it. But yeah, he's been in that world forever, and you have to give some credence to his expertise in that, right? Like, where if he sees a future, then I kind of take him at his word that he sees the possibilities because he knows the technology from the ground up, that he could see a future where that's possible. Yeah, I think maybe both of those things can be true, right? Where we do build in guardrails for the short term, but then we also build in the nurturing part of it, so that he made the analogy to a mother-child relationship where the driving force of a mother is to protect its child, and so you build that in so that even like I think he mentioned something about how a mother would sacrifice herself for her child. So we almost build it like that, so that humanity always comes first. And it reminds me of actually the three laws of robotics from Asimov. So I mean, this has been this he wrote this back in the 50s or 60s, I think, when he started writing about robotics and artificial intelligence. But the first rule was always, do not harm humans. So I mean, it seems like that's always been around that idea, but yeah, he kinda takes it to another level.
Yeah, that and the patterns that Hinton has seen since he was early days of even ideating on the creation of what we all came to have, I guess, more of a general awareness of when ChatGPT came out, like seeing how long it took to actually release that as, I guess, AI V0 to how quickly that's evolving. I would trust Hinton to inform in a very insightful way cautionary perspectives of what we should be ensuring we're factoring into the development of AI to for it to be responsible. And then I think like my next question for you is, do you think that the current leaders of AI development, Altman, Nadella, the guys at Anthropic, Elon, maybe even with Grok, and Pichai with Gemini. Do you think they are aware of or considering both Fei-Fei and Hinton's um, like perspectives in the way in which they're developing? Do you think they've listened to him? Do you think they've spoken to him? Do you think they have any influence by those two
Yeah,
leaders?
I don't know for a fact whether or not I know Fei-Fei Li is in Silicon Valley. She has a startup, and so she's in Silicon Valley. I'm sure she talks to other AI leaders. Hinton seems like more of a recluse. At least that's the impression I got. I'm not sure if that's true, um, but yeah, I mean, he didn't have very kind words for the AI industry, especially Zuckerberg and Musk, because he was asked at one point how he would rank the different LLMs, and then I think he said, "Oh, in terms of how do you rank the LLMs in terms of safety and ethics?" And he ranked Anthropic as number one because that's kind of their mission statement, is to develop responsible AI. And then he didn't like rank anyone else, but he's like, it's a race to the bottom with between Musk and Zuckerberg.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty brutal. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know if they're talking to anyone. I have to think, since they were former researchers, both of them, that they know people who are working on these AI products. I don't know if it's the CEOs or if it's the researchers. But I also know that, based on everything that I've kind of been reading, people like Mustafa Suleiman talks a lot about AI ethics, and he's the head of AI at Microsoft. And all these research labs do have ethical guidelines kind of on how they should be developing AI. So, my hope is that there's at least some thought that's put into this. Like, it's not, although I don't know what's going on over at XAI, but that's a whole other story. I don't think there are any guidelines or guardrails being put in there, unfortunately. But I think most of the other ones, I think there are at least minimal guardrails being put in.
That's encouraging, and the other thing that's super encouraging is that, the first, like, place that you went in summarizing the AI conference, and you said, like, there was 2 keynotes, that both of the keynote speakers at the conference focused on how to, develop AI in a responsible way, in a human-centered way, and with guardrails, like, with thought of not just, "Well, this is some cool shit, like, we're gonna go play around with it." you don't want to fuck around and find out with AI. Like you
Hmm.
you want to make sure
Yeah.
you develop this in a way where it is safe for sure. Even some of the videos that you and I have seen, like of leveraging AI for, like military purposes and into robotics, and how far do you let it go with creating its own next action and imputing what it should do next in a safe way. I mean, this is definitely this is where like zombie apocalypse stuff starts to creep into your head, and you
Hmm.
can see you can get there pretty quickly when when you see how powerful this can be. Next question for you is, did Fei or Jeffrey talk about the pace and the speed with which this technology is being developed? Did they give timeframes as to when AI will become more powerful than humans? And any time perspectives in their
I think they see it progressing very fast. I think everyone, including them, have been kind of stunned by the progress over the past few years. Although Hinton did say that, ChatGPT 5 seems like a step backwards in a lot of ways. I think that remains to be seen. It's still early. People really haven't put it through its paces because it's only been out for a couple weeks now. I think at that point, it only been out for a few days. So yeah, maybe we might hit a plateau at some point, but I don't think anyone knows really where, uh, how fast it'll go. I'm trying to remember. Fei-Fei Li said something interesting, and it's just escaping me right now. It'll come back, but it'll come back to me.
Cool. So I guess along that same lens, what are the constraints on the speed now? I mean, we spoke in one of our episodes about like energy and how
Mm.
much, and how expensive it is really to compute some of these, especially the deep research, and how long it takes. And obviously, hardware is a constraint, energy is a constraint. What other constraints are, the developers looking at that are trying to be unlocked so that these tools can get even more powerful?
Yeah, I mean, I think power is definitely a concern. There was another speaker who was with, I want to say, Cisco, Jitu Patel, who talked about kind of how power hungry AI is, and that if we're looking at a future where we have, agents running for people, like basically dozens or hundreds of agents running for each person on the planet, like we don't have enough power for that. Um, but I think that, if you look at something like DeepSeek when it came out, was it last year? Or, I don't remember. I can't remember timelines anymore because everything's happening so fast. But when DeepSeek came out, it was a market change from, what LLMs looked like, right? And then everyone kind of caught up, but like that reasoning capability, they were able to do it in a much, I think it was either a smaller data training set, or much faster and cheaper than even OpenAI or anyone else was able to do it. So I think we'll see kind of like um, these technological advancements that will. Well, I'm reminded of, who's the biologist, who was it, punctuated equilibrium in biology, right? In evolution, where it's like it wasn't gradual evolution. It was, race, 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 and then like plateau, and then race, 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 and then plateau. So it's almost like maybe we'll hit some plateaus, but then there maybe will be advancements that will kind of shoot up, and then we'll plateau again. So I mean, we don't know, right? It's so hard to predict those things, and I'm no expert in in any of that
Yeah.
technology. So
That makes sense. I mean, given like we can look back at patterns of other technological advancements, and, same thing, right? Like you need releases to then test, iterate, harden, and then innovate again. I mean, every technology that we look at around us, and, Moore's law for, computer processing speed, and televisions, and how clarity with televisions, and speakers for sound, and video game consoles, and even cell phones, right? Like, we've seen the pattern of innovation through technological advancements go through that run plateau like you just kind of described. And I would expect AI is gonna follow a similar pattern. You said something super interesting there earlier, in your last comment here about, like, how much compute is required.
Mhm.
And I remember when we all first started interacting with ChatGPT and prompting and just, seeing how awesome it was to get answers to questions so quickly without us needing to do all these Google searches. And now we can put or install a soft version of ChatGPT on our laptops, right? Like, and
Yep.
even understanding how large language models work. You were sharing something earlier, but like for our call, but I'm curious if you want to like help us understand how we can now install a lightweight version of this on our laptop. Like it just doesn't make sense, but like,
Yeah.
that's definitely an advancement, right? Like, you couldn't have even imagined it when this first came out a couple years ago, and now you can install a version of it on your laptop. So help us understand that.
It's crazy. So yeah, I guess ChatGPT 5 came out a couple weeks ago, and then just a few days before that, OpenAI released their what they call open weight models, which is like GPT-OSS. And there's a couple of different versions, like a smaller version that can run on a laptop. I think it's the 20 billion parameter version, and there's a 120 billion parameter version, which could run on like a super powerful, not super, like a powerful desktop computer with sufficient graphics processor. But anyway, um, but yeah, that's a great question. So I actually had the same question when um, the open weight models came out, and actually went and just asked ChatGPT 5 to explain it to me like I was 5 because I that's what I needed because I can't wrap my head around that stuff either. So it gave me a great kind of explanation and analogy. So the analogy was kind of what drove it home for me, but the explanation was essentially that you can train a model. You need a very powerful kind of setup to train a model because you need to feed it mountains and mountains of data, right? And for that, you need like server farms and multiple, maybe dozens or hundreds of processors all running in conjunction. But once all that training happens, the kind of I'll share the analogy now. So the analogy is that it's similar to how a chess player, let's say a grandmaster chess player, has seen, what, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of games in his life. He doesn't carry all those games with him. What he carries is the intuition that he's gained from that experience of going through all those games. So that kind of hit it home for me. He, so in a similar way, the AI then carries the kind of pattern recognition similar to how a chess player kind of learns pattern recognition of what moves come after what other moves, and in the same way, in an LLM is what word comes after another word, what's the probability for a word to come after another word, and it's those kind of intuitions that the AI learns, and then that there's this other process called quantization where that can all be compressed down, and that's what can be stored on your laptop and run on your laptop. So, I mean, it's still like that kind of makes sense, but it still doesn't. Like my brain can't wrap my head around that either. So who the hell knows?
So, like, why would I install it on my laptop versus just use the web-based version of it? Like, what are your thoughts on, like, is there a legit use case for it? Like, is it so that people can start developing stuff on
Yeah.
their laptop with it and, like, just have it embedded in?
Yeah, so I mean, this is not new, right? So DeepSeek, it was a open weight model, so they also released it as an open source model. A lot of the ones from Meta, like Llama, are open source. So these have been around for a little while. There's a website called Hugging Face where you can download models and run them on your computer. So I think the advantage there is kind of accessing the business and AI side of my brain, which do I'm very interested in kind of like the application of AI and how we apply it to business. You can run and you can so there's two different kind of methods for getting more accuracy from AI. One is you can just fine tune the model, right? So you take the model that they've trained already and then you feed it more inputs in a very specific domain of knowledge, right? Let's say you want to build like an LLM that can answer your questions about the legal profession, right? So you feed it case law and you feed it, the a legal code of a country or the US or whatever, right? And then you feed it that and you fine tune the model so that it knows very specific things about that domain. So that's one way to do it, but it also still carries all of that other knowledge. But The other way to do it is something called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, which is now I don't understand all the technical kind of details of this, but you take the LLM and then you almost pair it with like this database of knowledge. And there's this process that happens in between. I think it's similar to quantization, but I think it's called something else. So anyway, so you ask the LLM a question, it accesses that database of knowledge and then gives you very specific answers based on those based on that knowledge base essentially. So it's two very different ways to do it. From how I understand it, the RAG method is a lot more predictable because like the LLM does what it's going to do, but you know what the knowledge base holds. Whereas with the fine tuning, a lot of people call uh, LLMs like a black box, right? Where you don't really know what's happening because it's a predictive model. It's not a um, like it's predict trying to predict the next word, right? Essentially, um, and a little more complex than that, obviously, with the reasoning, especially. But so if you're fine tuning the model, it's still a black box. So you don't really know what's happening in there. Whereas with RAG, you know what's in the knowledge base. You can change what's in the knowledge base. But with
Mm.
fine tuning, you keep out to fine tuning it if it's not giving you the answers you want.
Sounds
Hope
like
that made
so.
sense.
So if I'm hearing you, RAG can be more customized to data sets specific to your use cases or sort of your domain that you want it to become more deeper, more expertise, or even more biased towards, versus like the fine tuning approach is more like you're going to have all of Encyclopedia Britannica knowledge available, and then you can try to tune it a little bit based off of the vast knowledge. So one just seems like it can customize it a bit more, versus the other one
Yeah,
seems
true.
like you're gonna tune it a little bit more.
Exactly right. And then there's also another wrinkle, which is small language models, which is it even more specific where you train a model only on the very specific knowledge you want it to have. So you don't train it on like the whole world's information like an LLM is trained on. You only train it on, and I think there is some element of like wider training because you want it to behave in certain ways and have certain knowledge base, but you you mostly train it on a very specific domain of knowledge. So that's
Interesting.
yeah. Yeah.
All right, I took us down a rabbit hole. I'm gonna try to bring us back. I know we geeked out a little bit on how AI works, but I think we've got a lot to think about with what Fei-Fei Li and Jeffrey Hinton shared with us regarding cautionary tales about the future. It certainly aligns with a lot of what we've been spending. I feel like anytime we talk about AI and anytime we talk about many topics, we come back to morality, ethics, doing things responsible, being good, being human centered. Sounds like they continue to echo that, and I'm glad that these are probably some of the foremost thought leaders of AI, and they're focused so much on the responsible development of the technology. So let's I'm sure you attended a bunch of other sessions. What else stands out to you? What else is interesting? What else should we talk about that resonated or stuck with you
Yeah.
after the conference?
Well, one major theme I'd say was this idea that, AI agents in the future, I mean, AI agents already exist, but I think it's getting to be a lot more widespread, will almost act like human teammates. Like you'll have a team of humans, but then also AI agents. So I thought that was an interesting kind of philosophical question, right? Like, how much agency do we want to give an agent to be able to make decisions and carry out job functions on its own? Like I guess that's just an interesting thing to think about, right? And what are your thoughts
Yeah,
on it?
I mean, I do some of this stuff at work, so I think about this a lot, and I think there's 3 stages to it. I think there's stage 1 where we want the AI to do the tasks that humans just hate doing, which should be automated, which should be alleviated, would help us to eliminate complexity in our systems where it's repetitive rote tasks that humans are error prone and nobody really likes doing. So great, perfect use case for AI. An agentic bot can do that. So examples that come to my mind are, think of how much, at least personally, I hate doing meeting notes and action items and follow-up emails after meetings and all of that, like distilling that down. It just seems time consuming and burdensome. And why can't everybody just take their own damn notes? Well, okay, great. Like that to me is a very good use case of AI can take care of that for us so we can focus on other things. And I think we were all excited about, like, if you use Copilot or whatever tool you use for automating your note taking, transcribing it, throwing it into a model, getting your action items. And even that, you see how shitty it really is. Like,
Mhm.
it still kind of sucks. It's not great. And so as fast as AI is moving, it takes me to my second point of what I think the stage 2 is, where and I think the agentic AI coupled and still human centered is, like, in our near term the way that agentic bots are going to be introduced into our workforce. Even from pair programming all the way up to maybe even white collar jobs. The AI bots are still not trustworthy to create outputs on their own. They still require a lot of human insight, human oversight to decide whether it's okay or not. The outputs. It's like giving an intern the responsibilities to put together a strategic business plan. Like, it has a PhD, it knows all the information, it's super
Mhm.
smart, but it has the experience of an intern and just gives you pretty shitty outputs.
Right.
It'll eventually get to the point where it'll replace white collar jobs. I see it. I expect it, but I think it's a little bit longer than we thought because I don't know how quickly we'll trust its outputs in an autonomous way. And that to me is stage 3. Stage 3 is where the agentic bot can be fully autonomous on a use case, require no human intervention, and now it has truly replaced a given role or a given function in the workforce. So one is, okay, it's going to take care of very basic routine tasks, not very sophisticated. Great. We're glad it's doing that, alleviate complexity. Two is it's going to do a bunch of stuff for us, but humans are going to have to oversee it. And then three, it's okay, now it's gotten so far advanced that, you know, you don't need the human to even review its outputs. It's fully generating its outputs on its own
Right. Right.
and replacing humans. So, and I think
Yeah. So
that's,
actually, so
yeah,
yeah. So I think that's I like that framework, and it goes back to the question of how fast do we get there, right? Because I think we all see it coming, and I think it's just a matter of how fast and how quickly these models develop and get better. And actually, I remember what I wanted to say about Dr. Fei-Fei Li. She was asked about artificial general intelligence (AGI),
mm,
and she she had a funny comment on that. She's like, "I don't know what that means." Like, when Alan Turing and Geoffrey Hinton, all these guys were thinking about artificial intelligence, they were not thinking of narrow use cases. So, like, artificial intelligence is like general. There's no such thing as AGI, so that's not true. So, like, these guys envisioned general intelligence. They weren't thinking of very specific narrow intelligence. So, I thought that was an interesting
that's
perspective.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I've heard Sam Altman talk a couple of times, and, like, I think Silicon Valley has adopted AGI as, I guess, the turning point for when the AI is what more advanced than a human. Like, there is some definition that the
Yeah.
community is using for what AGI means. But I get Fei-Fei's point. That's spot on. I mean, I agree with her perspective. I think we've just kind of co-opted the definition to be a certain milestone as we reach, more advanced stages of AI.
Yeah. I think the problem is that a lot of people have different definitions of it. So it's
Sure.
hard to kind of nail down what exactly that line is and when we're going to hit it, right?
Yeah, or passing the Turing test, right? Like the damn, it's named after him after all. So, all right. So that was a pretty interesting session about agentic AI. I think we're there. I agree. I think we're seeing a lot of companies create AI bots and, try to disrupt the workforce and disrupt the complexities of our structures. Uh I could riff on this for a little while because, like we have so much complexity in our lives. We've constructed complex financial systems. We've constructed complex healthcare systems. We've constructed complex consumer packaged goods systems, shipping, supply chains. Like, we have so many complex systems compared to the way life was when we had small little towns, small communities and villages where everything within your own little town was like we have farmers and butchers and cobblers and bakers and cafes and coffee shops, like all self-contained within our town. If we're going to keep with the spirit of our podcast, I have to ask you this question. Are we going to go into a world where analog is the new black, like, is that hip and
Mm.
trendy for us to go back to farm to table and like just being more community and town based? Or is AI going to unlock the complexity that we've been boggled down within our government and our industries that we've created to help them run more efficiently and still be able to deliver the value and the human care that we need? And top of mind for me is healthcare, because I think it's very relevant to all of us of just how complex healthcare is for us to navigate and how much promise there is that AI could provide some simplicity in healthcare. But anyway, let me leave that question with you about which way do you see the future going, back to towns, or we fix our large complex systems, or both?
Yeah. So my mind goes in so many different directions as you were talking about that. So first, let me start with this concept of productivity paradox, right? Where if you look at all the technology improvements that have happened, advancements that have happened in the past, say 75 years since 1950s, our productivity has gone up, but the amount that we work hasn't gone down, right? Whether that's, we're putting out more economic output per person, or, I don't know, like, at what point do we hit a limit of what human beings can do, and then human productivity starts going down, especially with AI agents? So
Hmm.
that's the first thing that's kind of hitting me. So I don't know the answer to that question. I think I see it happening more with agents than any other technology that's come before, because it can wholesale do things, or I could see a future in which an agent can do things fully that a human being was capable of doing or was able to do. Does that mean then that human beings are endlessly creative, right? So maybe we'll think of other things to do that we weren't able to do before because these agents are taking care of all the menial work for us. Maybe, I don't know. Or we'll advance so fast and so much that it'll do everything that humans can do, and then I don't even know what that future looks like. I don't even know if I want to imagine that future, to be honest with you. So that's one direction that my brain was going. The other thing that you talked about was kind of almost like a analog nostalgia, right? And I'm
Definitely.
kind of already seeing this where not to that extent, but like I'll see people writing, like I'll see an article online and people will either preface it or put a footnote saying none of this was written by AI. And I think I could see us going in a direction where people, because AI is so easily able to produce content, whether text or images or audio or video, that we crave human created content rather
Mm.
than AI generated content, because I think we're just going to be in the next few years. I think it's going to be so flooded with AI generated content that will crave that human touch. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's at least that's the feeling I have. And even I found, I write quite a bit um, on my Substack and LinkedIn, and even I found that I found myself taking shortcuts that I don't like myself taking. So I've kind of scaled back how much AI I use in my writing to just kind of outlining and not even creating a first draft for me, where because I think it's too easy to get a first draft, maybe change a few words and then put it out there. And that's not really you writing it at that point. That's the AI writing. And I don't like that. But I don't know how many other people will have those kinds of reservations. So that my fear is that we're just gonna be inundated with AI slop over the next few years.
Yeah. All right, we've got two threads going. I want to comment on the first one because I couldn't agree more with the productivity paradox. And the analogy that comes into my head is, I don't know whether, we had this promise of like, oh yeah, once as we create this, efficiency, and now that AI is going to take notes for us, like, okay, I will free up my time to, like write more or spend more time with my kids or, go on a date with my wife. Like it just doesn't happen. And like
Mhm.
I always like the one that hit home, the analogy that hit home or the example that hit home the most with me was like, if we had autonomous cars, like, would we just chill and listen to music, or would we squeeze in an extra conference call at work while we're riding in our car, or write emails, or do something else to increase our productivity? Because now the expectation is this is no longer downtime for you. Whereas driving, like I love driving because it is meditative, it's therapeutic for me. And if we introduce autonomous self-driving, that meditative relaxation and enjoyment of driving may even be eliminated. So there is definitely a paradox of technological advancements with, and it maybe it even ties back to the earlier point of just cautionary tales of advancements in technology being human centered, where we've lost that part of what it really means to be human centered, and why we are developing AI in the first place, and why we're developing technology in the first place. And in a capitalistic system, it's always going to be about driving human productivity towards capitalistic outcomes. And I think, I mean, I feel like you and I spent a lot of time talking about how we continue to reap the benefits of the societal benefits of capitalism while still balancing the humanity, the ethics, the morality of life, and happiness and fulfillment of us as humans and as individuals. And if we aren't having the conversations that we have a lot in this podcast, and then maybe even connecting to others in the industry like Hinton and Lee that are talking about the guardrails and the moral and ethical ways in which we develop AI, then we're going to just repeat the mistakes of the past. And God, is there any other cautionary tale more timely, more relevant, and more hitting home than what social media has done to our lives and our mental health and our society? And I would probably say that is root cause number one of the current state of the world was the advancements of social media. And I think it's created so much animosity and just anger, resentment in our society because of the speed with which information was shared with each other and the lack of credibility of people having insights, but yet the currency was pure attention seeking. And we see the cautionary tales of attention seekers driving ideation and ideology at a national level and at scale. All right. Went too deep. That was thread one on productivity. And then the second thing that you talked about, oh man, I went so deep on that one. And then the second thing was analog nostalgia. And I do totally aligned with you. I think we are seeing a trend and a movement towards analog. I'll give you another example, man. Like I went to the coffee shop in my local town again, and I saw, a another young couple. I think they were just friends, but probably late teens, early 20s, grabbing a coffee, sitting and having a conversation. And they were not talking politics. They were not miserable. They were just like talking about how they used to come to this coffee shop when they were younger. I mean, like, shit, they're still young, but they were talking nostalgically about grabbing a coffee, sitting, having a conversation with each other, and the dichotomy of how they interacted versus the other table of elderly gentlemen who, probably in their 60s, 70s, were just talking politics the whole time. And it was civil, but it was not like relaxing. It was tense, And I was like, "Oh man, like there is something nice about seeing this younger generation like happy sitting at a coffee shop, taking time out of their day and just having like a nice conversation while they have coffee." And I hope we see more of that. And I think it's a data point that helps support where, like, I'm hoping we see a renaissance for small towns. And I think we will, where, you have an opportunity to, I guess, just talk to your neighbors more and socialize more within your local towns and get more of that human touch and human connection. So I'm optimistic about
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah, no, and, it goes back to the whole, the loneliness epidemic that we keep talking about, right, on this pod, and how people are craving that kind of human connection. I just heard about there's a comeback of, book clubs apparently, like, book clubs are
Yeah.
huge, and then there's, something I just heard in I think certain major cities, they've started reading clubs, which is not even like a book club, like, it's literally you go to a place, everyone goes to the same place and just reads in silence just to be in the same room as other human beings. I'm like,
It's awesome.
I mean, that's great, but I mean, it's almost a little sad that we've gotten to that point where people are so starved for human contact that they need to, like, do it in these ways. But no, I mean, I think it's a good trend.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's you're right. It's sad but funny. It's entertaining. It's interesting. It's encouraging. It's kind of. I mean, you know what? Like 20, 30 years ago, if you would have said, "Hey, it's gonna be a thing to sit and read in silence amongst random people," like that was, they're like, "Yeah, it's called going to a park." Like you know,
Yeah, exactly.
but there's yeah, I've heard and read similar things that, and it's great. Like I'm encouraged by that, and I think that is how we heal and how we get out of the mess that I think enemy number one of social media has created. So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole. I think we could do a whole other episode on this, but there's the whole idea of additive versus extractive technology. I
mm,
was just listening to a podcast actually earlier today, by Cal Newport, who was talking about that, where there's this concept of technology companies, do everything they can to hook you in terms of making their app. First, they start as additive technologies. If you look at something like Facebook, when it started out, it was all about connection, right? Connecting to other college students or to family, sharing pictures. And then slowly, once they have you hooked, they switch from being an additive technology to an extractive technology by adding ads, by not the primary objective goes from connecting people, at least in the case of Facebook, to trying to get you to be on the app as much as possible because that drives ad revenue. And I think the term was coined by Cory Doctorow, which was the enshittification of technology, which is like it all inevitably happens. And we're almost kind of seeing that with like something like ChatGPT too, where it's plateauing and now it's kind of seeking out because all these companies are losing tons of money. So at some point they have to change their business model to make money, and at that point, I think is when the, you know, enshittification happens, right? And, so
yeah.
it's really interesting how these technologies evolve, and they almost become monopolies because what is I think Zuckerberg says that it's easier to buy a company than to compete with a company. So you end up with just a small handful of players rather than, uh, a vibrant landscape of competitors, and that smaller group is much more able to, lobby for its own benefit. Whereas if it's a true competitive landscape, then you have some competition and they're trying to outdo each other in terms of user experience and making the user the central part of the experience rather than profits.
I think we have to do an episode on what you just brought up. But there's so much there to unpack about the impact of publicly traded companies, charter being to deliver shareholder value, what has happened and gone wild within the private equity landscape, where it is like return to investors at all costs and throw caution to the wind. This concept that I've heard about a few years ago that a few publicly traded companies, maybe even only a couple, have adopted, where you balance return of value to shareholders with being a public benefit corporation, where you ensure that all stakeholders involved in the delivery of your business are also considered in the strategic decisions that are made by the organization. Lots to unpack there. Maybe this is a teaser for an upcoming episode because I think we could definitely dig into all of those and have some really interesting conversations.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that definitely warrants its own episode for sure.
All right. Should we try to wrap up here, man? We covered a lot of ground
We did.
here. AI 4 was the gift that kept on giving in this conversation.
We didn't even get to Andrew Yang's session about UBI, and so we'll have to cover that in a different episode, I think.
All right, for sure. I guess, yeah, let's cover it. I mean, I think it ties a little bit into the human productivity and your point of humans are endlessly creative, and if we are endlessly creative, will we be able to construct systems and, like, in the next iteration of capitalism where we still have jobs that we can, earn a living wage and have a sustainable middle class, or are we resigned to the Andrew Yang philosophy that, hey, this is the future and you're going to need some basic income for humans to even have a purpose and a function within a society that's fully agentic and AI driven. I've been waffling on it a lot. I've gone from one direction to the other, so definitely worthy of another chat there too, man.
Sure.
All right, you got a quote for us, my friend? I know we got. You got anything for us?
Yeah, I think I got a good one from Dr. Fei-Fei Li. So she was being interviewed by a journalist at the conference, and he tried to uh, phrase it in terms of a baseball game. He was asking, if AI is a 9 inning game, what inning do you think we're in? And she kind of shut that down immediately. She said, "AI is not a game. Humanity needs to win at the end." I thought
Love
that
it.
was perfect.
That's awesome. And to
Yes.
even come up with that off the cuff, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good stuff. Well, welcome back.
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm I'm sorry I missed it. As you know, I was going on the trip of a lifetime, going to Greece and Egypt. We'll have to unpack some of that in
Yes.
an upcoming episode as well. But thanks for the debrief on AI 4. That was awesome. Great stuff. Great conversation. And yeah, we'll look forward to a couple of follow ups after that, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great conference. Maybe we'll go together next year.
That sounds like a plan. Cool,
All right.
man.
That's a
All
pod.
right. See ya.